engagement. Diana, with the Digital Natives Project, it was mainly a book about educating adults on the topic of children growing up online. So you're TAing a class right now at Harvard, and I want you to explain a bit about the engagement aspect and how students are relating to the material.
So here's the deal. The internet accelerates serendipity. So when you have a class, what a class is basically a time when everybody theoretically agrees to be thinking about the same thing at the same time. And the more people are thinking about it at the same time, the more chance there is that you'll be able to make a connection between two pieces of information, or connect the information the professor is talking about with another piece of information you already know. And that's the way that, that learning happens. So the class I teach at Harvard Extension School, there are 2 professors, 2 teaching assistants. The 2 TAs are 21 and 22, and everyone in the class is 25 and up. There are 40 students. 10 of them come to the class on site for 2 hours a week, and then the rest of them theoretically watch at home on the live webcast or later. But it's a class about the internet, so what my job during class is to run the question tool, which is the back channel for the class. And all the students who are watching the live webcast from home, when the professor asks the question, I'll throw it up on the question tool, and then they'll sort of give their answers, or people, and it gets very lively, almost so lively that some of the students say it's too lively, they can't keep up, and they just give up. The usefulness of this back channel tops out at about 5 people being super actively engaged. But those 5 people, I know I learn more from running the back channel than I would from being in the class otherwise. And I think that it's just so amazing when people can just, as the serendipity happens, as the pieces of information occur to them, they put the link on the question tool, or they make a comment. And the conversation is so rich because people are, rather than having something else to switch their attention tool, like their email or anything else they might want to be doing on their computers at home, if they're not intentionally engaging, there will be nothing. They'll be on their computer at home or in the office after hours, and they just won't be learning anything at all. So it's much more obvious to the distant students that this is a necessity. On the other hand, the students who are actually in the class don't use the back channel at all. It's as though there are 2 classes. One is the TV show class, where we're all the peanut gallery talking about the class and some other things. It's a starting point for discussion. Whereas in the class, everyone's very docile and sort of doing their own thing and not really even being that engaged. So it's an interesting juxtaposition.
So essentially you said that there were 2 classes going on at the same time. What kind of value do you think that puts on each level of the class situation?
Well, I think one thing it shows is that there may be a way to, there can be one class, one discussion topic, and everyone can participate in it on different levels, but you don't need to have 4 professors. You can have 1 professor and a bunch of mediators, because I don't need to know all the information that everybody else knows in order to have a productive discussion with the people in the class. This is not a one-to-one, this is not a one-to-many conversation where I'm telling them information. I really want to know what they know and just serve as a catalyst for aggregating that in one place so that everybody else knows it. And
sorry, real quick. Are these classes more like lecture-based, or are they more like seminar-based?
The class as it runs is it's 2 hours long, and it's once a week. So the professors lecture for a little while, or bring in guest speakers, and then ask questions of the class. So it's half and half.
Okay, so essentially my idea of what you just said is that if people are in class, they might be taking the class for credit, or just because they need to get it out of the way for their degree, and so they're not really engaged, but people who sign up from a distance really want to essentially learn the material. Do you think that's true?
No. I think that the people who participate definitely want to learn the material, but there are 30 distance students in the class, and out of that maybe 10 of them really participate online. with intention and energy. But the thing is that because there's no classroom or no lecture hall where I can see half of the people not caring one bit, I only see the people who don't care don't exist because there's no information that they're putting there. I don't have to, they're not dragging anybody down because they just aren't there. They're on a spreadsheet, and every week I look and see whether they've participated or not. I maybe send them an email, but the conversation is partly so rich because there's no absence there. There's only presence. And that's the funny thing about a classroom is that you've got this mix of presence and absence because you can see all the people getting distracted, and it's very disheartening to teachers. Teachers just want to be liked too.
So you talked about presence and how that really affects engagement. So I'm going to throw it up to everyone here. In your own experience, you've obviously always been in class, or I hope you have. But does that make you want to participate more? So once you leave class, do you feel that your participation automatically ends, or do you feel like you want to connect with your professors or fellow students more?
I think it kind of depends on the class, and it also depends, I guess, how often that class is. Like I'm skipping classes Monday, Tuesday, and a few on Wednesday. And because I'm skipping those, I need to work really hard because I have a test on Friday. So I'd say for me at least, it's really class dependent, and then also, yeah, I mean, sometimes skipping class is a good thing.
It's actually not as important for me to connect with my professor just because of the class size. If I miss class or if I have a question, I'm not going to go and ask them. I'm going to figure it out on my own. I'm going to ask a classmate that I've met in class and find it on my own. It's just not that important.
I mean, for me, I'm in pretty small classes, so I think that, being absent from class is going to be pretty noticeable, and that, that the need to find, to see that information is greater. So, if that technology were in place, which it's not at my school, it would be easier to, to miss class and still be connected if these social communities were active. Yeah. Sort of in off hours, just make things so much easier.
If LMU had its distance learning act together like Harvard does, my grades would be so much better right now.
So here's the other thing: is that one of the major criticisms of the internet and technology is that it makes things easier. Yeah, that's the point. That's why people made it. But the question is, are you making the important things easier? Or are you making the unimportant things easier so the important things can be productively difficult? We were talking earlier about whether Facebook makes it too easy to not be brave, because all you have to do is send a sort of passive note or wall post to somebody in order to gauge their interest or ask them out on a date. The same thing is true for classes. Is it a bad thing that writing an email to a professor lowers the barrier to going up to speak to them? It's easier to have the courage to impose on a professor's time, which is kind of a weird concept in itself, if you can write them an email rather than going up to them after a 750-person lecture to waste their time. The thing is that professors usually like talking with students, in my experience, if they care at all. The thing that professors don't like is dealing with administrivia. So that's the other thing, though, is that if a professor, I don't know, I hate seeing professors get bogged down by email when what they really want to be doing is having real conversations with students. Because obviously the real conversations are better, but I've had some great conversations with professors over email. I wouldn't want them to be on GChat, because I think that maybe lowers the barrier too much. I think that much like a stamp on a letter means I cared a forever stamp's worth enough to communicate this to you. And it's just enough of a filter that only the people who really want to get you that information are going to do it. When there's no cost, there's no barrier, and people are totally frivolous. So emailing a professor an hour before papers due to ask about formatting is manipulative, I think. I think that it's kind of nice to have scheduled times when everybody's sort of supposed to have their act together, rather than have it be this rolling thing where it can happen anytime, and that means it always happens at the last minute.